What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and we got a really nice card for you guys tonight as we cover the Saturday late pick 5 over at Churchill Downs, which includes the Grade 2 Chicago Stakes. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys could, if you enjoy the show, please go down below the video player, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because it's the best way to support our channel. It's completely free to do, and it pushes these podcasts and others out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you guys. There's a ton of big fields tonight. There's only one field of 7, and the rest of the fields are all 11 and 12 horses, barring any defections of horses, cross-entered, anything like that. But a lot of good betting opportunities today, and I definitely have some good opinions from a price point of view. But real quick, guys, I want to give a big shout out to everyone. Last week for the Delaware Derby and Oaks, we had a very good showing out for viewership last weekend, so thank you guys all. Again, we can't run this without you guys, so we really thank you for all the support as of recently. So as you can see, bottom side of the screen right now, you can see all our normal live shows throughout the week. Intermittent Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have Horsin around Tuesdays, every single Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, except yesterday. But of course, for good reason, as the Penn Mile card was again moved to next weekend. So next week, Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, with Noah, Ryan, and Jackson over with the Pacific Horseplayers guys. Of course, every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern with Bettin N Boozin right here with myself, Patrick, and Charlie, and every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern with Picks and Ponies, Howard, Pete, and Paul, of course, over on that show. So again, if you guys enjoy the podcast or want to learn or want to keep coming back, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, so you'll never miss another podcast here on the HHH Racing Podcast. You can also listen to all of our podcasts in audio form over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Anchor. So if you're more of an audio listener, please go give us a rate, review, and subscribe over there. New socials at Bettin N Boozin Podcast. Not really new anymore, but if you want to get into more short form content from myself, I usually post on there at least every single weekend. If I play anything during the week, I will also post then. So please go follow us over on Instagram and TikTok at Bettin N Boozin Podcast. Of course, you can go to patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast for our fantastic and affordable tip sheet, which is the highlight of it. $21.60 a month, but at only $4.99 a weekend it comes out to, and you'll get a tip sheet every single Saturday, which includes price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. We here at the HHH Racing Podcast have you covered with the power picks. You can see we've been doing this since February of 2021 with 870 total price plays and spot plays, and we are well over the positive ROI mark. So again, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast for that. The link is also in the description, and you can go view previous editions of the power picks before you buy them, or if you just want to learn more about our podcast, go to hhhracingpodcast.com. Everyone out there, we've got people piling in, so thank you guys all for joining the show. If you guys are new here, you guys can, on the bottom right hand side of the screen, we have the live chat. Please, these PPs, again, that's the thing that Churchill does fantastically, is that they put these PPs out well in advance. So I know some of you have already looked at them. So if you're watching this live, please comment in the live chat about these races as we go through them. But also, if you're watching this as a replay, please feel free to comment below the video player on who's your best play on the weekend. Katie, of course, was here bright and early. Juan Ramos. Juan, I haven't seen that name before. Thank you so much, for joining the show. We greatly appreciate it. Terry Frank is here. Ralph Conti is here. And of course, Katie, we're betting and not losing like baseball teams. I would plead the fifth on that one about the team on top of my head. But guys, I'll bring my podcast co-host, and then we'll get right into the show from the Ohio State University. I see he's talking to someone right now, but I will bring him on. Charlie Freeman. And of course, we have a special guest today. And of course, as they didn't get to talk about any racing yesterday, we figured we'd throw him a little bit of a bone and bring him on here as Patrick is away from Pacific Horseplayers, Noah Maher. Gentlemen, Noah, thanks for joining the show again on a little bit notice. But again, you got kind of got a little bit screwed because of last night's endeavor.
Yeah, no, it was all right. I always love to spend my Wednesday nights with Charlie, especially, and of course you, Kyle. I was a little bummed that Patrick wasn't going to be on the show because I was on the golf course earlier today, and he's last couple shows I've seen, he's been wearing polo, so I thought I would be matching with him today, but not going to happen. Maybe next week.
I'm usually there as well, but I'm repping the show, of course, as usual. Chuckles, my friend. We played Delaware Park, of course, last weekend. If you follow me on Twitter, I absolutely hammered Churchill Downs last weekend, completely whiffed on Delaware Park, although we were a little bit rained out per se in terms of some races.
Yeah, I was in Montreal over the weekend, but actually Noah and I tried to play because we had some similar opinions, a little Pick5 ticket together. And I was trying to find ways to stream the racing in Canada in between to catch a few glimpses. And I got to see 2 races, I think, and it was one of them was a leg we won, and then one was the leg that knocked us out. So yeah, that wasn't great. But you know what? This weekend I'll have some more free time, so I'll be looking forward to actually, getting to play this card and what's going on. But yeah, it sucks because I agree with you. I think on paper the Delaware card we covered was great, but from what I got to see, the weather didn't look like it really played out in our favor.
It was going back and forth all week about whether it was going to rain or not. I was hoping that it would stay out. Of course, it poured on us. But again, big shout out to Crownsway Racing, a bunch of the guys, myself, and a bunch of other partners with Vote No in the Cape Henlopen Stakes over at Delaware Park. 1.5 miles, and huge shout out to Kelsey Danner, of course, our trainer. Once they claimed that horse, she wanted to go along with that horse. We ran Vote No at oh my gosh, where did he win his first race? I'm blanking now at this point, but either way, he only ran at 1 mile and 16th, I believe. No, Indy. I'm a moron. Ran at Indy at 1 mile and 16th. Ran very well then, and they immediately threw him in 1.5 miles effort against some very nice horses out at Delaware that day, and he passed the test with flying colors. I believe he got a 94 Beyer, so very interested to see where he ends up next. And again, we'll be remiss if we don't talk about Otago, who ran a very game second, but no one was beating Chad that day. That Chad, I think, ran a 102 Beyer or something like that. I think Otago ran a 93. So very similar between the two boys. So big shout out to all the partners of Friends of the Podcast, Crownsway Racing. Of course, I am one of them. So guys, we'll get right into this card at Churchill Downs on Saturday. And this card is actually very nice. As I said, 52 horses in the 5 races, only one field lower than 11 that we are going to talk about. And that is the second leg of the late Pick5. But of course, we have to start in the first leg. And I'll be remiss if I don't mention that this is a Downs After Dark special on Saturday. The first post is at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I took a look at the weather, my little 5-second weather report for my Paul Halloran weather report. Didn't look like it was going to rain. I don't believe so. If I'll check that again right now, but looking dry, and hopefully it stays that way. The late Pick5 starts in race number 7 as I bring up the Echo Base on the screen right now, and you'll see it come up. There we go. Morning line favorite is the number 3, Echo Lane, Florida bred for Luis Saez and Rohan Crichton. Second choice is to the outside, or number 7, in the middle. Miranda writes, the only one in for the claim. Florent Giroux rides from Mark Cassie at 3-1. And your third choice is number 10, Army Officer, Vince Cheminade, Brad Cox at 9-2. And I'll bring up our picks right now, guys. And I am the odd man out. I'm fully the odd man out. You guys have exactly the same picks in here, and I know between you two that does not exactly bode well for you guys. So I'm interested to hear why I'm going to be wrong and you're going to be right. No, I'll start with you on the number 3, Echo Lane.
Yeah, I just found it tough to get creative in here. I just think Echo Lane's probably the best horse in the race. I know the main concern would be, if people are trying to bet against him, he's lost as the favorite several times before. You go back to the beginning of the year at Gulfstream, he lost as the 5-2 favorite. Lost last time, where he didn't really have a ton of an excuse last time against Lord Bullington at Churchill on May 11th. But, he's run well at Churchill before. I think the field last time is probably a little bit better than the field that he's facing today. And in terms of the races that we're going to be talking about, I don't know what you thought, Charlie. I thought you could definitely make the argument that he's one of the more likely winners in the sequence.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, look, as the Gulfstream guy, and is a horse who he's done plenty of running at Gulfstream, so I know him all too well. And he's been a horse, Noah, that I've really tried to bet against in the past, and kind of a much lower level version, I guess you could say, of Zulu Kingdom for me is another one of those that I always am going out of my way that I know will be a short price and trying to win. But look, Echo Lane, works out his own good trips. He's a tactical horse. Depending on what the pace and distance is, he can really sit wherever Luis wants to have him. Again, Rowan Crichton's a trainer who I like a lot and think is underrated, but he's starting to get his name out there more as he's picking up some wins now at tracks outside of Gulfstream. And yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously the concern some people will see is that he is consistently a low price and hasn't always gotten it done. That being said, if you look at all those races, he's always, other than one of them, he's been top 3 in all of them. If you look at the pace setup scenarios, sometimes they've sort of worked against him, whether it's that, he was sitting too close and it went too fast, or he was, trying to sit just off, but they crawled on the lead like last time. But he's always in and around there. I just think he's the most consistent horse in this field. And as much as I'd like to pick against him, I just don't think there's anyone as talented as him. Obviously, something to note about him, Kyle, and you can talk about it with your 4 is Echo Lane and the 4 are both also entered for a race on Friday, I believe.
That's correct. Yes, they are entered in on Friday in the 8th race at Churchill. So obviously keep an eye on that. But guys, I mean, you hit everything I wanted to hit on Echo Lane. There's not really too much to talk about as I crack a can of the Nectar of the Gods, which I forgot to mention earlier. But like I said, he's very tactical, which is one thing that I really like about him. And he has gone the mile in the 16th before. He ran a mile at Gulfstream. He's just one of those. He's not really like a push button, he's a very grindy type horse. And in a race like this, I don't know if it's necessarily who I want. I think there's others that are basically on the same level as him, but you can see the 1, 8, and 10 on time form look to go out to the lead. 10 is Army Officer for Brad Cox, who doesn't necessarily want to be on the lead, but between the 1 Saint in the City, who has been on the lead before, and the number 8 Aspenite for Pratt and Asmussen, that horse will definitely want to be on the lead. So don't think they're going to be crawling. I think there's going to be at least a little bit of pace injected into this race, which leads me to my top pick, the number 4, Axar Ben Derby, who actually I know from running in the Hawthorne Derby and winning the Hawthorne Derby last October. If you watch that last replay, guys, you can actually see it in the notes as I have it too zoomed out for that. But as I scroll over here, you can see inside 2 wide upper hand ride. He didn't try very much at all. He was inside in traffic. Obviously, that was also first off the layoff as well, so he definitely needed one based on the ride. Edgar Morales rides for John Ortiz a lot, and he comes back into this spot second off the layoff. Plus, he gets a little bit farther, and of course, we can't show the replay because of Churchill. But he for all the Howards out there, he galloped out way far and past. Makes me think that this horse has a lot more to give. Not to mention that he wasn't even ridden for this race. And if he's going to be double the price of the 3, I would love if Axar Ben Derby stays in this race and he runs his race in here, because I don't think he necessarily wants to be too far back. I think he'll sit a mid-pack trip. And if they do at least run honest in front, I think he's got a very big chance to win this race at a nice middling price. The only concern I have is that every single time he's ran at Churchill, he hasn't run the best. But again, like last time, he has a complete excuse. And at the end of last year, he actually ran a very good race in the Commonwealth, just losing to 2 horses by Laganos and Evade, who would be very short prices in this field. So I'm going to take a big swing here, money-wise, not necessarily odds-wise, with number 4, Axar Ben Derby. You guys both have him in second. Again, you have the same horse in third. So, Charlie, feel free to hit on anything I didn't. And why, maybe hit on why you have this horse in second versus having number 3 Echo Lane in front of it.
Yeah, my main concern is just going to be, is there quite enough pace, or is he going to have too much to do? Personally, when I watched his replays, I like him a little bit more at a mile and an eighth. I don't think a mile and a 16th is too short by any means. It's not that I don't think he can get it done. Obviously, like you mentioned, when he ran Churchill at a mile and 16th in the past, he ran against, horses like a favorite of mine in Laganos. But, Bias Aside obviously is at a different level and more of a graded level than these types of horses. But I just like that Echo Lane's more tactical, is going to have the jump on this one. And I just think the mile and 16th distance suits this one better. I remember when I watched Echo Lane run at this distance at Gulfstream, I was very impressed. And also, obviously, he has his career best Beyer 97 at this track and distance back in November. But no, look, I think the 4 absolutely makes sense. On horizontals, I would definitely be using both of them. For me, I don't know about Noah, but even though I do think Echo Lane's a likely winner, I don't think I'd go as far as to single him. So I would definitely be using this 4, and then I'll jump into the 7 and let Noah add on. That's Miranda Rights for Cassie with Kyle's favorite Flaunt Giroux aboard. I think he fits in this spot, and I do think he's another one who's kind of tactical, maybe not quite as tactical as Echo Lane, but similar. My main concern with him is I just feel like we kind of know who he is at this point. Like, he just sort of peaked at an 88, which, look, obviously an 88 buyer fits in this spot, but I just don't really think he's getting any better. And I get that it's third off the layoff, but honestly, I thought he ran fine second off the layoff last time. Again, I just think it's kind of who he is, and he just seems like the kind that doesn't love to win, and he's more so just one that's always going to run a really solid in the money, or somewhere in that 3rd to 4th range is just what he likes to do. Obviously, you see in 19 career starts, he's ran 3rd 6 times. So I just think with his style and ability, he's safe bet to get up for a piece. But at 3 to 1, I'm trying to beat this horse. I don't think that's a horse I want to bet on at those odds.
I mean, obviously, Noah, you agree with all those statements. Yeah, he's just one of those to me that always runs his race, but I just feel like we know exactly who he is by now. He's never run above an 88. And he's probably won at least 3 of those that I can see on the screen right now. So kind of just seems like he plateaued a little bit and might be just a little bit below the other horses in this race for me.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of his 2 races so far this year, the 1-2 back was off the long layup, but he didn't really do much, and he kind of got a little bit of a setup that day. And then last time that race was kind of screwed up with all the scratches, got down to a 4-horse field, and Northern Invader just kind of walked around the track. So there's really not much to take from that. Maybe you can, forgive that and give him one more try here on Saturday. But I'm kind of with Charlie. I think you would have to demand a decent price on him, not something too short. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the 3 and the 4 if they do end up going in that race on Friday, because I feel like if either one of those 2 scratch, I feel like he might be too low of a price than what he maybe deserves, and then maybe you could try to find some value with others, maybe the 4 or some other maybe like lighter raced horses in the race.
I completely agree with you on everything you just said with Miranda Rights, and obviously you can argue that he's the only one in for the claim on Saturday, so that could be a negative to some people as well. I went with the number 9 Factor Analysis in 3rd, guys. Ben Curtis, Eddie Keneally, off that last race on the trainer switch. Eddie Keneally got this horse really good and really ready. Only ran 7th in that race at 37 to 1. However, ran a best buyer top of 90. If you click into that race, guys, I mean, Johnny's Fireball, Corruption, Oscar Season, a ton of these horses. Corruption ended up winning that race with a 96 and came back in the Manhattan. Didn't do the best, but still ran a 91. Very respectable, and especially in a field like this. So I wanted to throw the 9 in there at least off that last effort, and against probably slightly worse competition, I think he might be able to at least get in the money. However, obviously you're going from 38 to 1 to going to 6 to 1 here, but hopefully he'll still stay a pretty decent middling price to be able to get in your exactas and trifectas. Jim Pilar, my friend in the chat, safe travels to you. Thank you so much for joining the show as always. I know with the schedule it gets intermittent and spotty, but of course we love to see one of our longest supporters in the chat. So have fun around the Greek Isles and Athens and all that, and hopefully all your travels will be smooth and safe. Guys, let's move on to race number 8. I'm 4-3-9, and Charlie and Noah are both 3-4-7 in race 7 to kick off the late pick 5 at Churchill Downs on Saturday for Downs After Dark. Race number 8, guys, is the only field below 11 horses we'll talk about. It's a field of 7. Starter allowance 50,000, 7.5 furlongs on the dirt, which is actually a pretty interesting distance from that shootout there. The morning line favorite is the number 7, Anonima, for Brian Hernandez and Kenny McPeak at 5-2. Second choice, the number 2, Daisy's Duke, Irad Ortiz, Ron Maquette at 3-1. Third choice, the number 6, Lolo Le Plume, for Julian Leperoux and Rob Hess at 7-2. As I bring up our picks right now, 2 of us are going with the number 7 and Anima for Brian and Kenny McPeak. Noah, you are going a different way. You're going with the second choice, the number 2, Daisy Duke. But again, it's kind of all you, Charlie. You actually don't have the 2 anywhere, but a lot of us are Noah and I are both 2-7 intermittently changed. So Noah, I'll obviously let you go first here again, as you are the one that is different between the two of us. So what'd you like most about the number 2, Daisy Duke?
Yeah, I think just watching the replay of the last race was not ideal. He was blocked, or she was blocked for quite a bit of the far turn in the stretch, and Moquette is bringing her back fairly quickly, but it's one of those situations where I'm not really all that concerned because she didn't really get much of an opportunity to do a whole lot of running. So it just seems like she's going to be fresh and ready to fire off of the quick break. And even though Leparoux has, been stationed down in Louisville, this is a big rider upgrade to Irad. I think that's going to be a big key on Saturday. And hopefully that rider switch is not going to affect the price too much in this race.
Well, you all know you take the IRAD text and you put this horse in here, but I agree with you. I also think that she's going to sit a little bit closer based on time form, guys. You can see she's second in the flight right now. They have the number 3 going out in front right now, and that is Madeline's Promise at a 10-1 price. You'll see time form favors the front runners, but Charlie, I assume that's why you like the number 7 as well. As with Brian Hernandez aboard, this one has showed speed from the outside, and 0-3 at Churchill. But however, I'd say a lot of her toughest challenges and first starts have been the reason for that record at Churchill.
Yeah, and for me, it's also just I love the cutback angle here. You look at her works in the mornings, and I mean, she's been flying. You see last time out that 58-4 bullet for 5 furlongs. It's just pretty insane to see. So clearly looks like they're trying to get some speed into her. And again, I just think all along what this horse has been needing is sort of long overdue now is that cutback. I mean, you look at a lot of her different races, and she's sitting right up on or just off the lead. Has been running last time at a fast pace. You look at the race 3 back, ran against Fondley, who came back to win, and early on, obviously, has been a nice horse. And before that, was running the Grade 3 Honeybee. So is also getting some class relief here. I think the cutback will allow her to be able to sit a nice stalking but forwardly placed trip and have some extra in reserve that these others don't. And I just have a feeling that she does still have enough natural early speed that if Brian feels that they're just going too slow and, sort of walking the dog on the lead, that he'll show enough interest and make sure to keep her close up that she's always within touching distance. And I also just like that outside draw to allow her to avoid getting, buried on the rail with any sort of traffic on the inside. And I do think she is the class of this field. Obviously, the question is just going to be, can she get it right at Churchill now? And maybe this is just the right distance and setup for her now.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I love that she's drawn to the outside here. Not a whole lot of horses on the inside at all that want to go for the lead, besides that aforementioned 3 Madeline's Promise. And Anima looks to sit just a beautiful trip. And you mentioned the working super forwardly out here and Kenny McPeak doesn't usually work them fast like that. So as you mentioned, there might be trying to work a little bit of speed into her, which I think only helps in a race like this. So I am also going with the number 7, Anima, because I think she's just going to sit a perfect trip in this race. You both have the number 6, Lola LaPlume, in 3rd and 2nd, respectively. Or respectively. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Works doing the thing to me this week. So I'm trying to recover a little bit here. But you guys both have her in 3rd. Leparoux hops back aboard for the 3rd time in a row, and last time you had her off your maiden win. So Noah, anything you want to add on this horse?
No, I mean, maybe Charlie's got some more creative stuff because he does have her in 2nd, but it just kind of seemed like the light bulb kind of turned on with her. She was a little bit closer. So maybe with the cutback, because it seems like with the races, if you kind of cross that last one out and a cutback doesn't look super beneficial to her just because she didn't show a ton of early speed. But last time she was a little bit closer, but I kind of have a little bit of a feeling that was maybe by default just because she had been facing open company and then got into that restricted race and was the favorite. So I think she just kind of caught the right field on the right day. But if there's anything that we learned from this light bulb angle, sometimes it works. And, she's run well at Churchill before, so maybe she can step up her game and against winners for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you there. I just didn't want to go with a 3rd favoritism price. But again, she makes all the ton of sense, especially if she can build off that last race. I only wanted to touch on Take Charge Omaha, 6-1 in here out of an Arch mare. So you'd assume that this 7.5 would be okay. Ran really well at Keeneland in the spring. Got claimed off of Dale Romans, now in the Eric Foster barn. Last time out, tried her at a mile. Didn't really work too well, but if the pace does heat up, I don't think she wants to be that far back. If she sits somewhere in the middle, I feel like she can at least get up for some type of exotic, but it would be a little bit of a stretch, I think. And she would need a pretty decent improvement to win in this race. But I like Take Charge Omaha, the number 5, to get into your trifectas and maybe superfectas that you play in this race. In race 8, I'm going 7-2-5. Charlie's going 7-6-1. Noah's going 2-7-6. Guys, let's move on. Which this is the feature on the entire day. It is the Grade 2 Chicago Stakes. And as I bring up the Equibase right now, you'll see we have a full field of 11, and the morning line favorite is the very talented, all the way to the inside, the number 1, Emery, Florence Rue, Brad Cox at 5-2. Second choice is in the middle, number 5, the one key to one of the 2 keys to my heart out of the Sharita Vo barn, the number 5, Vava. Irad Ortiz stays aboard. Sharita Vo, as mentioned, 3-1, and your third choice is number 9, My Main Squeeze, Luis Saez, Mike Maker at 5-1. And guys, if you don't know, this is also a race that's held near dear to my heart because obviously we won't touch on it here because I'll go on a rant and we'll probably get booted off the air. But this race was, of course, run at the fantastic, brilliant Arlington Park. First ran in 1986, won back-to-back by Laser. I think the horse's name was Laser Show, if I remember correctly, ridden by the great Pat Day. So obviously a lot of Chicago history here with the aforementioned Chicago Stakes. And I bring up our picks right now. You suck up. Noah's going with my favorite horse, number 5, Vava. I couldn't do it, guys. You see, I have her in third because I want to have her if she does win, and God forbid if she wins, I will have money on this horse. But either way, Charlie, you and I are both thinking very similarly with the number 9, My Main Squeeze. Noah, like I said, a lot of these horses we've touched on in the past, and we've seen them run many and many times, especially against each other. But the number 5, Vava, man, those last 2 races have just been so bad. But if she gets back to form, I mean, she's just as good as, if not better than, all of these in this race.
Yeah, they've definitely been disappointing. I know you've liked her quite a bit. I think you even liked her quite a bit last time, and it was certainly disappointing. But she was off the layoff. You can maybe give her a break, and she's working pretty well. Obviously, she likes it at Churchill in the last race in the Derby City Distaff was the only race that she didn't win at Churchill.
Yep.
One little plug for our little sponsor, DRF. I love using DRF to put in trip notes and stuff. And it's actually worked out well because I tweeted not too long ago about a bunch of horses that were kind of stuck on the rail Derby day and that they've come back to run really well. Journalism was one that comes to mind. Bracket Buster, who just romped at Monmouth. I can't remember if that was last weekend or the weekend before. But Vava's, she fits that bill. She was down on the inside. She did not like the slop at all. And she was just on the worst part of the racetrack. So if you're going to find any reason to believe that maybe she gets back to that form, I think that angle that's been doing well is going to get her there. For my heart, no, I sure hope you're right, because like I said, this was the absolute hammer of the second hammer of the century. Of course, the first one was Brilliant Birdie last year that ended up being later in the year, but Vava on last year on Derby Day that we all were there. She beat the great rivalry between Vava and Alva Star, ended up just beating her that day and had a very nice price to me at 8-5. So I'll gladly take that. And again, one of my favorite horses in training right now. If she gets back to form, I'm going to have money on this horse. And basically, just like dynamic pricing was a couple weekends ago, I will cash on this horse if she ends up winning. Because again, if she gets back to the form that she showed last year, she's better than every single horse in this race. It's just a matter of trying to find it and maybe if she still has it in herself today. But she's working like it. I couldn't agree with you more, Noah. Vava, hopefully, again, for my heart and soul, to win the Chicago Stakes. But Charlie, you and I, thinking with my head, I really like My Main Squeeze in this race. This is another one that really likes Churchill.
ran in the Dogwood and ran in the 8 Bells last year, ran in the Dogwood last fall. Absolutely destroyed both fields. Now comes back into here. Didn't run that bad in the Ruffian, I think. But however, get Luis Saez back aboard, which I know is a big plus for you, and hope she can return back to that Madison form.
Yeah, and I honestly thought she ran fine last time. I don't think that a mile is truly what she wants. I think she can get it. Obviously, she got bet down late that day to favoritism and still ran a very respectful third, and also, had to note that she did clip heels at one point. So I think she has some excuses. But for me, I thought the Grade 1 Madison was a bit of a weird race, and I thought for that to be first off the layoff, all things considered, she ran pretty well. Obviously, as you mentioned, 2 for 2 here at Churchill, including at this distance, winning going away. I just think she's versatile. I love that Louis back aboard on her. She's working steadily as well, which is a plus. This is now third off the layoff, back to her usual distance, again, at a track that she likes. And I just feel like Louis is going to know how to put her in the right spot. And if they don't go fast enough, he'll make sure to keep her close enough that she doesn't have too much to do late. And if they do fly, that he'll be happy to have her sit a little bit further back. I just like her versatility. I like her consistency. She seems like one that is improving, and I get that, you see that 90 buyer, now you're like, well, now I don't know. For me, again, I just think that was more of, some difficulty she ran into along with the distance, and I do think she's an improving 4-year-old. And, I get it. There's others in here that are certainly a concern, but I think there's pace set up, and I'm kind of just banking, with all due respect to you and Noah, with Vava, that I'm looking at a horse who's on the way up and trying to beat a horse who may potentially be on the way down.
I mean, I completely agree with you. And obviously, based on my picks, I completely agree with you as well. I thought, like I said, especially that buyer number looks real good first time off the layoff at 4. Last race, like you said, I don't think a mile is what she wants, although that is still 1 turn over at Aqueduct. I've gotten that wrong before, so graciously pointed out by the chat that day that I was wrong. But if the pace does heat up, especially according to what Timeform says, she has all the right in the world to win this race. And if she can improve off that Madison, that 95, I mean, you're looking at, high 90s, and that's well and truly enough to win a race like this, hopefully at a pretty decent price of 5-1, because that will be the old irresponsible wager of the week if we get it. I have the number 1, Emery, in second. Charlie, you have the horse in third. No, I completely understand that you don't have this horse in there. It's going to be a pretty short price for a horse that might be a little bit hard to trust, at least on the win end. But she loves this. I love that all these horses, like 7 furlongs is such a weird distance a lot of the time for horses, because they either run 6 or they run that mile. All these horses in here almost are basically 7 furlong specialists, so they all tend to run against each other a lot. And Emery's been as good as a good gets. Obviously, Tyler Gaffleone hopefully should be coming to the end of his injury stint and should get back on the bridle here soon. But Tyler Gaffleone rode this horse to absolute perfection. Had her in that Raven run. Obviously, the horse was 7-5, so of course you knew I had it. But either way, as good as one gets. However, with a little bit faster pace, I'm a little bit dubious against her when she gets that fast pace in front of her, because she's very keen to go on with it, but she does love a good pocket trip. So I think it's a must use on the win end, or if you don't want to use her at all, or if you don't like her, then you don't use her at all and you try and beat her with a couple others, because I think she's going to be below that 5-2, at least in my eyes. Guys, we'll move on to the number 11 here, who you guys all have in there somewhere. It's Zeitlos. Pratt hops aboard for Asmussen after Jose Ortiz hops off. Look, Zeitlos has been one of those horses that's really weird to crack. Like, she runs so well sometimes and really bad other times. So, Noah, Charlie, anything you want to add on Zeitlos? Because I feel like this is one that could be a must use at a nice price.
Charlie, you go ahead, because I want to say something at the end.
All right. Yeah, no, well, this is one I'm definitely going to use. I mean, I know I have Emery in third, but maybe on a backup I would use her. But to be honest, I'm going to try to beat Emery and Vava and just try to get, some bigger prices here, like my main squeeze and Zeitlos here. I love 8-1. I love that I'm getting Pratt. I love that it's second off the layoff. I just think there's a lot to like. Now, I will note Zeitlos has been a horse that I've used a lot, and honestly, she's made me a lot of money, so I can't really knock her for some of her not as good efforts. I will say, and no, you can tell me if you agree or not, I do like her more at 6 furlongs. I feel like that's where she shows her closing kick the best. Obviously, you can see her at Churchill 4 for 6 on the win end, 5 of 6 in the money, but those came at 6 furlongs primarily in 6.5. And with the setup, I like it a lot as well. And I love the Pratt top in a board. I almost put her on top. Again, it was just my main reservation is if I'm picking a horse off the pace between her and my main squeeze and it's at 7, I would just rather have my main squeeze. But I still think there's a lot to like. I can't see how you get 8 to 1 on this one. I'm guessing you're getting closer to 6 to 1, maybe 5 to 1 even. But again, I just think with the setup, with it second off the layoff and with the flashes she's shown for me with those fires in the 90s, I had to put her somewhere in the top 3.
Yeah, and gun to my head, I would probably agree with you. I think she's probably better at 6 than 7. I just thought her last race was pretty good. She was off that long layoff. I just think she's going to show an improved effort. And, her buyer top was, mid 90s before. And I don't really see any reason why she can't run that again. And that, should probably be in the mix in this race. The one thing I wanted to mention and to point out to the viewers, both the 1 Emery and the 11 Zeitlos are both owned by Stone Street Stables. And Pratt's ridden the 1 before, and Pratt chooses to ride the 11, which I find as a little bit of a negative to the 1. And truthfully, I don't like the 1 at all because I don't think she's very good. But I just thought that was an interesting nugget because sometimes when you see, jockeys that have ridden horses before, especially with trainers that have multiple horses in a race, you would think that jockey that knows the horse somewhat would hop back on,
Well, and that's Pratt for Cox as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good. Obviously, I don't usually like to play jockey gymnastics, but at least you notice little tidbits like that, and it definitely makes you think at least a little bit, especially on a horse like Emery, who you'd imagine would be first choice for 90% of jockeys in this race. So I like that you pointed that out a lot in here. And obviously, Jose Ortiz not riding Zeitlos isn't a knock, even though you do get Pratt, because Jose Ortiz is over in Ohio at Thistledown this weekend to ride Clever again in the Ohio Derby. So not a big negative for me there at all. I completely agree on Zeitlos. It's just a matter of it's not one that I tend to trust a lot because she either runs really good or really bad. So, and one that's going to be coming from off the pace. And again, Charlie mentioned it. I mean, it's just the horse, who would I rather have coming from behind in a race like this? Plus, I wanted to have, I completely handicap without morning lines for those that don't know before I put my picks in here, and then I put on the morning lines for the show. I can't believe Vava's 3 to 1. I thought it was going to be the opposite between the two, but I don't know if she'll be that just because of the last two. But look, she's been so good and a Churchill specialist, so I wouldn't be necessarily surprised at that 3 to 1. But I also wouldn't be surprised if she's 6 or 7 to 1 come post time in the Grade 2 Chicago Stakes. I'm going 9-1-5. Charlie's going 9-11-1. Noah's going 5-9-11. Guys, moving on to the last two races in this, and starting, of course, with race number 10. It's an allowance optional 125,000, going 6.5 on the dirt with a full field of 12. And the morning line favorite is the number 8 Invictus. Pratt hops aboard for Brad Coxon here at 3 to 1. Second choice, the number 11 Camp Hale, the horse that always runs into monsters, it seems. Finally got that win last time. Shows up here at 7 to 2. And your third choice is the number 3 David of Athens. Luis Saez hops on for Brennan Walsh at 5 to 1. Putting up the picks right now, guys. All finally going with different horses in this race, and for rightfully so, because this race is not easy. I'm going with the number 3 David of Athens. No one's going with number 11 Camp Hale. And I should have guessed that one was coming. Charlie's going with the Charlie Way, going back to the well with the number 5, one of his horses, Key Waden. So Charlie, give you the floor, my friend. But again, 12 to 1 is a nice price for this horse, and finally cutting back to that 7 furlongs, which might be or 6.5 in this race, but that between 6 and 7, which might suit this horse best.
Yeah, this might be slightly too short. I think I would want 7, but I'm fine with 6.5 here. Look, I don't think you're going to get 12 to 1. I think people will still see those first two efforts and see the workouts and how lightly raced he is. But honestly, to me, I feel like if I'm getting at least 7 to 1, even 6 to 1, I think is enough value that I would still play Key Waden. Look, trying to put bias aside here, Obviously, he's been a disappointment. He looked really good in his first 2 starts. The Remsen looked like the whole field was bad. Then he comes back off the layoff at a hot pace. And I guess they just wanted the lead at all costs, which I didn't agree with, and it didn't work out. And to be honest, seeing how he flew from off the pace in his debut, I kind of was hoping to be more of a stalker or closing type anyway. And I just like that they're putting him now obviously off the trainer switch. I like what William Walden's doing here and putting Key Wade in a spot that I think makes a lot more sense. Again, I think the way he's working so promising in the mornings is something I love. I like the blinkers on because I do think he could use, something to help him focus a little bit better. And I also just think, I was talking to Noah about this before the show. Visually, to me, with Key Wade, he looks better when he has a target and he's rating and he has a horse to actually go get, rather than try to be rushed to the lead and then hold them off and then kind of lose focus and then just gas out and have nothing. Again, I know there's a lot of changes here between the trainer and the blinkers on in the distance, but I like the cutback. He'll have the stamina. I also think in a race like this where it's a bit interesting because you're not really sure who's going to go and how much speed there will be. I was kind of looking around and I thought UW would be the obvious one to send, but they took blinkers off. Obviously, Camp Hale's going to be forwardly placed, but isn't like a complete need to lead at these shorter distances by any means. So I just feel like as long as Key Waden, sitting somewhere in the 3rd to 5th range within a few lengths, I think he can make sense here, and I don't see why second off the layoff with his workout report or work so he can't step forward. And I feel like in a race like this where I'm not fully sold on anyone, I love these odds if I get anywhere near this.
I mean, look, you could see I went back and forth so much in this race. See, I actually had Key Waden in 3rd at one point, which I actually left there. Ended up switching out for Noah's top pick, the number 11 Camp Hale. If this horse runs back to the 7, I don't see a second off the layoff, first time out for Will Walden, who's had a lot of live runners so far this year, let alone this meet. Working so forwardly, gets blinkers on, basically complete new look again for this horse. Get double digits. I don't hate this at all. I actually really like this spot for Key Waden. Just think he's going to have to overcome a lot in this race because there's a lot of stout competition in here. Noah, starting with your top pick, number 11, Camp Hale. I always joked about this horse because it always seemed this is like one of those that just always ran into monsters. You could look, actually have my top pick in the first race there with David of Athens. Then you got Guns Loaded, then Grande, then John Hancock and Owen Almighty, then Invictus, who's also in here, and he finally gets the win last time, and now hoping to build off that last effort, finally getting in the winner's circle.
No, and this race was weird. I mean, Charlie was kind of touching on it. He kind of prefers that Key Waden maybe sit a stalking trip, and I'm not quite sure what Timeform says, but just looking at it from the early pace figs, I just thought the pace scenario was a little bit murky. Obviously the 5's going to show some speed, and the 9 we've seen on the lead before, but he's blinkers off. It's just really hard to imagine that the 11 just does not get a really good trip in here. And I'm just kind of hoping the light bulb kind of turned on with Camp Hale last time. I mean, even his other races where he didn't get the job done, he really didn't do much wrong. I think the longer the better for Invictus, and Invictus just, beat him on the square 2 back at Keeneland. And, even when he tried long, he was second to Grande as a big favorite, and then really ran an okay race in the Sam F. Davis. So he's got, good races under his belt, and maybe, he's finally got the win and the confidence to do it again. And I'm loving that 7-2 right now. So you'll see a little bit later when we get to best bets.
Yeah, and obviously he went back to, basically was a cutback, trail, right? Because he come back from a mile and the 16th in the Sam F. Davis to 7 at Keeneland. Kind of didn't have a little bit as much gas as Invictus had, then cuts back to 6 and wins going away. So look, I've always thought Camp Hale has a ton, which is actually why I ended up putting him in 3rd over Key Waden. Obviously barring the price, but I've always thought this horse has talent. It's just a matter of putting it all together, and he finally did last time. So definitely want to have him in the mix. I'll touch on my top pick in a little bit here, but I want to go to Invictus. TC Markham, this is one thing. If you can find a single in here, that's huge in terms of a horizontal sequence. TC Markham says he's a single here in race 10, which I love the confidence. And I agree with Howard, who just put in, I said, looking forward to seeing Invictus come back, probably cut back as well. Can't be as bad as he was last time. And he was pretty bad last time at a price of what, 2 to 5, I think, or 1 to 2. You can see it right there. I just don't think he wanted to go a mile and 16th. Brad tried something, didn't end up going. And now coming back into this race, getting back to that 6.5, 7. This will now be 3rd off that layoff from 2 to 3. I really do like Invictus in this spot. Just I don't know what type of price you're going to end up getting, Charlie.
Yeah, look, I will be using him on horizontals because I think this leg's pretty open, but vertically, I wouldn't touch this horse with a 10-foot pole. I think the value is going to be terrible. I think my guess is you're probably going to get 9-5 or 2-1, which is I would probably want at least 9-2 on this horse, to be honest. Look, I get what the hype is. I understand this horse, ran against Chance on debut and was bet heavily, cost 1.2 million, came back off a massive layoff and looked dominant. I remember Keeneland was originally like third or fourth choice and then got hammered at the very end to under 2-1 odds. And showed why all that late money came in. And then, like you said, a mile and 16th didn't work. I'm curious, Noah, I'd like you to add on because obviously you have the horse in third. If any of the reasons you didn't have this one top, for me, my main concern is while I do think a cutback is beneficial, I'm not sure if 6.5 is a little too short. And my other concern is I'm not sure with the way this field is filling out. And like you touched on, Noah, with the 9 also getting the blinkers off, I'm not sure the pace scenario is going to exactly work out for this 8. Now, again, I think of talent and potential. And like you said, Kyle, maybe Brad just tried something, didn't work, and maybe he is just a monster at this, 6.5 to 7, and I'm just wrong. But I just feel like I have a few reserves where I just want to see it one more time. Again, I'm going to use him in horizontals because I'm still scared of him. But for the price I'm going to get on him, I had to put him somewhere in the money because I absolutely think he can win here. But I do have some reservations.
Yeah, I think Pratt's going to have to work out a trip and maybe work out some magic to work out a winning trip from the 8-hole, just because Camp Hale is right to his outside and has got some speed. So he's going to have to work out from there. When I first saw this race, I thought I was looking at another Cox runner in Gunmetal because they've kind of got the same resume where their one Lasix race was so much better than their other races that are off Lasix. And you can see the one on Lasix, he gets back on it on Saturday and it was, the best in the field. So if he gets back to that, he's probably a winner. But I just think this race is so wide open and it's indicative by our picks. I just think this horse is going to be, outrageously overbet. And I think there are so many more other valuable options in this wide open race.
I agree. And I think he can win by 5. And I think he can get a nice, a fantastic Kyle finish at Keeneland, a nice closing up third. So be interesting to see where he lands, both odds wise and of course at the finish line. But I really think Invictus has a big shot in this race, just a matter of being overbet or not. I went with the number 3, David of Athens, guys, and this might be a little bit too cute in this race, but first time out, ran at Keeneland for Brendan Walsh. We all know how good at Keeneland Brendan Walsh is. Now this is going to be the first time out at 3 years old for this horse, who actually, like I said, won that race at 2, now comes back. This is almost kind of like that Invictus angle last, where he ran first time off the layoff at Keeneland. He's very good. Ended up beating Camp Hale that day, who obviously is Noah's top pick and is 7-2 in this race. I mean, just look at this field. I mean, Camp Hale, Patch Adams, who obviously came back to win the Woody Stevens of the 99. Ain't No Disco hasn't been seen since Gulfstream, but came back a winner 2 races later. White Whale hasn't been the best, but then you go to T-Craft. I mean, T-Craft has come back, won a listed stakes race, ran the Woody Stevens, got an 88 buyer. This is just a very, very good field coming out of Keeneland last fall. And based on the works, he's working minute 1, minute flat, wet fast at the Keeneland track at 48. He's been very, this almost seems like the plan all along was an allowance race at Churchill once Brendan Walsh thinks he's ready. And if, again, you're getting a decent middling price on this horse, I'd be much rather take a bet here in a wide open race, as all these guys have mentioned already, versus someone like Invictus. Again, even though Invictus can win by 5, this will also be first time Lasix for David of Athens, not an angle I tend to pick up right away. However, I think it's definitely at least valuable information. Also, you get Louis Saez aboard and no one passes Louis in the stretch. So my top pick, again, might be a little bit too cute, but David of Athens, I think, is a very decent value option in here. And Howard, you're actually hitting on a point I wanted to touch on. Don't sleep on Jimmy DeVito with the number 2. Excellent trainer. Not everyone knows about. Very high on the Chicago circuit for a long time. You can see the horse is working at Hawthorne and has been since early May. I thought this is just one of those horses that I would need to see it again from on last time, but he ran super well in an allowance optional last time N1X. Now comes back into the same spot, same track, just a little bit more distance, which could help him as well. So I don't think the 2 is necessarily out of it at all either. It's just so many different ways. And Faust, who came back at Oaklawn for the Asmussens and absolutely blitzed that field. We already talked about Keewaydin. Dapper Moon has ran some really good races at this sprinting distance. Stonehenge is going to need to improve a little bit more. You for John Ortiz and Irad picks up this mounted 8-1. First time Lasix, blinkers off. There's just so many different ways you can go in this spot, which I feel like, again, has been noted by our picks. It's just a matter of who's going to get the best trip in a really hot field of 12. I'm going with the number 3, David of Athens. Charlie's going with the number 5, Keewaydin. Noah's going with the number 11, Camp Hale, even though we all have Invictus somewhere in the mix. 3-8-11 for me, 5-8-11 for Charlie, and 11-2-8 for Noah. Guys, let's move on to the last race. But of course, before we do, if you guys are enjoying the podcast that you guys are watching, if you guys are enjoying it, why not go down below the video player here on YouTube, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. We live handicap 3 different cards every single week here on the HHH Racing Podcast, and we'd love to have you guys along for the rest of the ride, and especially into the summer months when we start talking about Saratoga. So please, again, if you are enjoying the podcast here on YouTube, or if you're enjoying them on X, come over after the show on YouTube and hit the subscribe button and the like button. It's our main way how we present these podcasts, and we would love to see your guys' support. Guys, let's move on to the last race. And again, no claiming races in this entire sequence. Again, another field of 11 here. Starter allowance 50,000, going a mile and a 16th on the dirt, with the morning line favorite being a very lukewarm one, but the number 1, Tiz Marcus for Flavian Pratt and Norm Cassie at 3-1. Second choice, the number 9, Bolt at Midnight, Rafael Bejarano and Chris Hartman at 4-1. And your third choice is shared between 2, the number 4, Lured Away, and the number 10, Vamos Carlitos at 5-1. As I bring up our picks right now, 2 of us are going with the number 1, Tiz Marcus. Noah, you're going with a horse that Charlie has in second, and the number 4, Lured Away. I'm going to be honest with you, as we'll get into this race is so tough, man. I mean, we said it so many times last race, but there's so many different ways you can go in here. And it's, of course, I didn't really default to the favorite in this race, but because I still think he's pretty talented. But no, I like that you're going a little bit out of the way here with the number 4, Lured Away, even though I don't have the horse in there anywhere.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Charlie. I was all kind of 1-4, 4-1 in here. Lured Away is running some pretty decent races. You know, he was in a pretty well-meant 3-year-old restricted race 2-back in April at Keeneland, Skate Away, and Lion of Justice are some decent 3-year-olds in that crop. And then last time was just closing and didn't get much pace, going a mile in the 8th, lost to Brigel and Sweet Talk and Bourbon, who are also some decent horses, and has kept some pretty good company. I'm just kind of hoping that maybe the 1 and the 9 mix it up early on and maybe set things up for the 4. But in a weird way, I almost kind of feel like it's either the 1 or the 9 who kind of, fend off 1 and then fend off the rest, or those 2 kind of duel in a submission, and then it could just open it up to anybody. And if that's the case, I'm hoping the 4 Lured Away is just classy enough to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's, like I said, he's definitely one of them that can pass that. You could see based on the time for him, another fast pace in here. 4 is actually in the back, but has the best last late pace figure on the time for him. Again, graciously DRF sponsors us, and I wouldn't recommend using anything else. As unbiased as I can be, having the time form US in their formulator, it's really the best product that you can buy, at least from a PP perspective, in my basically learning how to use online PPs, because I was a complete paper guy through and through, all the way through Arlington when I worked there. But obviously away from the track, you got to try and find online PPs, and Formulator is easily the best one that I've found. So thank you, DRF, for, of course, supporting the show. Lured Away, Charlie, you have in second. You obviously thinking on the same lines as Noah. Hoping for a pace meltdown, even though he has shown can be somewhere in the middle, which could, of course, help him in this race.
Yeah, and like Noah said, I sort of see this race one of 2 ways. Either Tiz Marcus just shows that even with the hot pace, that, Pratt works out a great trip, saves all the ground on the rail, gets on the lead, or maybe stalks right off, and then is able to have the fractions be reasonable enough to win or win going away, or it's enough. And you kind of see this if you look at his races, right? You look at some of his earlier races where they did go faster and he wasn't able to hold them off. And then you look at his last two where the fractions were a little more moderate and he won going away in both. So it sort of seems like however the pace works out is going to determine this race. And the one might just be too classy that even if they know he's the favorite and try to make him work, it doesn't matter. And they don't make him work enough and he just wins going away and Pratt just has a masterclass here. But if that doesn't happen and they say, we are going to try to make this favorite work, I agree with no. That's why I landed on the 4 and 8 as my other two. Is I just feel like either the one is able to get towards the front and hold everyone off, or somebody from the back is able to take advantage of the space scenario and get up and lure it away. Like Noah said, has been facing some tough horses. I don't know if you mentioned all, but also early in the career faced Instant Replay, who's another one who came back to be nice. But yeah, like Noah said, had been running some pretty live, tough races. And didn't exactly get the best setup, and is obviously one that's going to need a setup considering he's going to be at the very back most likely. But I do think, like Noah said, this is really 1 or 4. That being said, I will touch on the 8 briefly.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm the only one who was the 8 or not, but I thought Strategic Force was just interesting as one who is lightly raced. I like the Louis aboard, and then it's third off the layoff. This was one who, at Keeneland off a pretty decent layoff, went back to the dirt after they tried turf from the disappointing debut, got a decent pace setup and was able to nose out to win, and then came back last time and stepped up against Racing Driver, who's come back to be a decent horse, and then actually I think the 2 in this race who had finished second there. And I just think there wasn't quite enough setup in that race for him to get there. But I just like that he's lightly raced. It's third off the layoff. It's only his 5th career start. I think there's a lot of positive. Now, I will say with it being Louis and Brendan Walsh and with how good they each have been and together, I can't see you getting 10-1 on this one. I'm guessing it'll be closer to 6 or 7-1, to be honest. I just think on connections alone in a race like this where you can't really trust anyone, that will be some people may default on. But I like the setup for this one. I think he can take a step forward. It's a little bit of a big ask to say he can necessarily win here, but on horizontals, I would definitely be using him at least in some extent.
I agree with you. I have him in 3rd as well, to answer your question from before. Watching those replays, though, he's very, very grindy. He does not have that really acceleration that you really need in this spot. I think you might get close to 10-1, Charlie, because, I mean, you're just looking on speed figures alone. Tiz Marcus has an 83 and an 84. Strategic Force's best buyer is a 67 last time out, so he's going to need to improve just based on numbers. I think he's definitely one to include in your exotics by trifectas and superfectas, but just the way those replays look to me, I don't think he's got the acceleration needed to win a race like this. However, if he does get another decent setup in front of him, Strategic Force is one of those I want to have underneath. And the last horse we'll talk about before we move on to best bets, actually, I'll talk about 2 more, is number 11, Laugh Now, Cry Later, newly trained from Michael McCarthy, and Irad Ortiz hops aboard on this horse. Major, I mean, what can you say about this one? Major trainer upgrade, major jockey upgrade. Now he's been working super well at Churchill, where Mike McCarthy's already won 3 races at not his biggest circuit by any means. Has run at Churchill twice, but again, in the old barn, actually in an older barn and the old barn. So first time out for Michael McCarthy. I don't know if this is necessarily what he's looking to here, but has been working at Churchill ever since early May, if not before that. So Laugh Now, Cry Later. Probably won't get 10-1 on this horse, I'll say. You'll probably get somewhere in the middle, 5-6-1 on him. But Laugh Now, Cry Later. I had him on top for the longest time and ended up just putting edging Tiz Marcus up above him. But Laugh Now, Cry Later, I think, has a big chance in there. But Vamos Carlitos is the last horse I want to talk about because, you're looking at just allowance optional and claiming races. He fits unbelievably in this race. Last 2 back, he ran in the Risen Star. Last time out, first off the layoff, he ran it in an optional claiming M1X at Churchill, going 1/16th on Derby Day, and just on the slop, didn't like it at all, was way back. And again, goal-oriented, hipness, magnitude, chunk of gold. You can talk about all these different horses in here. No one near that caliber is in this race. So Vamos Carlitos, I think, is definitely, as Howard put it, I like that one too. I think his form's a little bit dirtied up. Interested. I completely agree, even though I don't have him anywhere. Noah, you have him in third. Anything else you want to add before we move on to best bets?
No, I think you were spot on. I just wanted to include him because number one, that race at Churchill, he actually also fits the angle I mentioned earlier where he was on the inside, and I love that angle right now. But also, it's just in terms of pace, if the 1 and the 9 do heat things up and it continues to or it shows to melt down, it seems like he can maybe get the jump on the 4. So I'd be maybe a little concerned that the 4 was too far back. So I would want to have him in the mix in case he's a little bit closer this time around.
Completely agree. And as you guys saw from my picks and kind of the way I was thinking, from a horizontal point of view, I definitely have some bigger opinions early, which would allow me to spread both in last race and in a race like this. But to close out the late pick 5 in race 11, I'm going 1, 11, 8. Charlie's going 1, 4, 8. Noah's going 4, 1, 10. Guys, best bets. We will start with Charlie going back-to-back win bets, which you could probably play as a double and probably would be a lot bigger return, of course. But Charlie, I like your thinking going with the number 9, a win bet on the number 9, my main squeeze in the 9th race. So 9s are wild there in race number 10, going back to the Charlie well with a win on the number 5, Key Waden.
Yeah, to be honest, I kind of went with the best bet that I feel stronger about and then more of a price play just because I'm trying to create some value here. Look, I think my main squeeze car, we talked about at length, 7 furlongs is the better distance for this horse. Makes a ton of sense here. On paper is going to get the right setup, get the Louis aboard. I just think there's a lot to like. And to be honest, Kyle, I think we both agree if we get the morning line odds, we'll both be placing some pretty irresponsible wagers. So I don't know if we'll get that price, but at least on paper for now, it's reasonable enough for that to be a best bet win bet. And then race 10, we talked about at length. I think that race is wide open. We all had different winners on top. We talked about so many different horses that we thought had a chance. People in the chat shared some other horses that we acknowledge as well. Kyle, I feel like, we at least to some extent acknowledged almost every horse in that field besides the complete long shots. And because of that, for me, with all these changes, the cutback, how the horse is working, the blinkers on, I just think there's enough for me to like Q Waden to give him another chance here. And like I said, by no means is this me just chasing a horse that I've had connection to in the past. Like I said, if he was half his odds, I would be a lot more hesitant to touch him. But at 12-1 in a race this open, I'm willing to find out.
No, look, and you're going to get paid to find out as well. So even if he does run well, I'm sure you're going to have some exactas with him underneath and everything like that. So good luck with your 2 best bets, Charlie, on Saturday. Noah, going to you next. Starting on double in race number 7. Of course, the first race we talked about, singling the number 3, Echo Lane, who you talked about was one of the most likely winners of the day, with 2-7 in the next race. That is both Daisy Duke and Anima, the 2 favorites in race 8. And of course, race 10, a win on the number 11, Camp Hale.
Yeah, sorry. Echo Lane, definitely going to be the favorite. He's probably going to be 9-5 or 2-1, but he's not going to be too low that you wouldn't be able to bet him. Is that sugar? Is that sugar, right? Hello, sugar.
No, it's Chelsea.
Oh no, that's the little one.
Sorry, Chelsea. Anyway, he's going to be a low price, but maybe not too low to maybe play a win bet if you want to, but it's such a big field that you should get, a reasonable price. But I'll try to get a little bit of an inflated win price and try to use the 2 and the 7 on the back end because I just kind of think that's a 2-horse race. I think it's either the Moquette runner or the McPeak runner that's cutting back. And then fast forward to race 10, I just really think Camp Hale is going to get a really good trip. So he's going to be stocking second, and hopefully he can kind of push the button at the right time and beat Invictus in there. So those are my 2 best bets.
No, like I said, you think Invictus is going to be bet down to 9-5 or 2-1, going to get paid no matter where else you look. Noah, good luck with your best bets. You guys know me, kind of very simple at this point. I really like Axar Ben Derby in race number 7, the first race we talked about. Completely non-ridden last time out. Looks to get back second off the layoff here on a very live mid-pack trip. Of course, if he doesn't enter in Friday's race 8, so keep an eye on both Axar Ben Derby and the aforementioned Echo Lane to see which race they end up going in. But of course, as you can see by my best bets, I would love for Axar Ben Derby to go in on Saturday in race number 9, which of course is the Grade 2 Chicago. I also like a win bet on number 9. My main squeeze, think she could just get really hot at this time with the fact that she's back at Churchill and has a fast pace in front of her. But of course, I would love for Vava to win for the heart, but of course my mind betting with my mind rather than my heart on Saturday. But everyone else, thank you guys all so much for joining. Had fantastic viewership the whole way through on this Wednesday night, covering just a random nice card at Churchill. So thank you guys all for the support and for the support last weekend. We greatly appreciate it. And tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern for Picks and Ponies with Howard, Pete, and Paul covering the Ohio Derby card at Thistledown. It's kind of the small track central here, part of the summer, where we covered Delaware last week. We're supposed to cover Penn National this week and Thistledown. Of course, that didn't end up happening. Penn National will hopefully be covered next week. But for my co-hosts, Noah Maher, wrong figure. Noah Maher and Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 135 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the 621 late pick 5 at Churchill Downs, which includes the Grade 2 Chicago Stakes. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.